a.m. kind of people? How many of you are the 10 a.m. kind of people? How many of you just love to just hang out with Jesus all the time? Okay. Mike, France, great to see both of you. Coming all the way up from the far north to be with us. No, not Seattle, Moreno. But anyway, it's close. It's in that direction. I mentioned earlier, and kids, I was supposed to dismiss you 10 minutes ago, so get out of here. No, we love you. Kids, it's children's church time. You don't want to miss it. It is a great time. So kids, you are welcome. You're not obligated to leave, but you are permitted to. The seventh commandment. How many of you have gotten anything out of this series on the Big Ten so far? Some great stuff. This is one that some of us will think does not apply to our life. And this is actually one of the most difficult commandments. I learned the seventh commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery, when I was 5 years old. Now, first of all, it was a confusing, I didn't even know what it meant. When I heard the word adultery, I thought that was the process of going from childhood to becoming an adult. And that is definitely not what it was. But I learned it in Mechina, which is kindergarten, in Hebrew school. It was customary for a child to learn the 10 Commandments by age 5. You actually had to learn the fundamental doctrines by age 5 of Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And our parents took it very seriously. So beginning at age 5, you are in the shul, that is the temple. Well, you'd already done that since I was born, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. every Friday night, every Saturday morning, from 8 a.m. until noon, and then we had lunch together. And then every Tuesday and Thursday, there were 2 hours, then it eventually went to 3 hours of Hebrew training. And so even if Jews miss Jesus, at least we knew what we believed and why we believed it. Our parents took it very serious, especially after Nazi Germany. They're saying it was never again. We want our kids to really know what it means to be believers in Yahweh, but they missed Yeshua, unfortunately. So how do you teach a 5-year-old the seventh commandment? They don't have a wife. They better not have a girlfriend that they're at risk of cheating on. And so it was really a strange time. So I was looking through my journal. I started journaling in 5th grade. And how many of you, your handwriting still looks like it looked in 5th grade? You know what I'm saying? Penmanship was definitely my worst subject. How many of you were like me also? You were the first one out in the spelling bee. You were the first one out. In fact, you figured, why bother? It's like, why put me on a basketball team? There's certain things I'm just not talented at, if you will. But here's how my teacher taught it. And in 5th grade one day, I wrote this down when I learned what adultery was, because one of my uncles was being kicked off the island for cheating on my mother's sister, my aunt. And Jews don't put up with this real well. You know, he should be glad he just got out alive, okay? But in the family, that went through the family. And should I have known this? No. But they felt it was important to mark them and to say, you will not be in this community, because the Jews are very concerned about the sin going viral. Grace was not a major thing there. It was law, to say the least. But here's how I was taught the 5th commandment, and this could help you, 7th commandment rather, and this can help you with your kids as well. And I want you to know this is parents, you need to know, this is an R-rated sermon for righteousness. For righteousness. I would have no problem with my children hearing this, but if you have a problem, my email is Bob Peebles at gmail.com. So anyway, just so you know that. He's going to get 1,000 of them this week. Hey, there's 5,000 people out there, so I'm going to tell all of them right now, hey, send Bob an email, because that's not really his email, so he doesn't care. Okay, here it is. A little boy named David was invited to his friend's birthday party, whose name was Samuel. And David responded yes to the invitation. A few days later, David received another birthday invitation from his friend Michael. And he really wanted to go to Michael's birthday party because Michael was the it kid. Must be in the name Mike. Michael was the it kid. That was the birthday party with the jumps, the trampolines and all the cool things. And they had the magic show, and that's the one he wanted to go to. But the problem was Samuel's birthday. And the birthday for Michael was on the exact same day. So David called Samuel and told him he couldn't attend his birthday celebration, even though he responded yes to begin with. Samuel was devastated when he learned the reason that Michael wanted to go to the more fun party. He wanted to go to the more popular kids party, if you will. Do you see where this is going? David began to feel guilty, so he goes to his father, which is a good thing for kids to do. I went to my father, who was about 50 when he had me, and actually my mom had me, but you get the point. And Dad lived till 98 years old. And Marge will tell you this, when it came to many decisions, I talked to my dad all the way till his mid-90s. I wanted his wisdom, his insight. He didn't know Jesus. He wasn't far. But boy, the insight that I learned from my dad and from my mom. And you have to understand, the greatest fear of a Jewish man, and I brought this into my Christian experience, is to ever cause shame on his family name. Is to ever cause shame. That is the ultimate thing. And that's not all bad. Don't live in condemnation. Everything I'm going to talk about today, everybody say blood of Jesus. It cleanses you from all unrighteousness. You're only one prayer away from getting on the right track. So please do not be condemned, but please be convicted by the Holy Spirit. It is important what I'm going to share with you. So he went to his father when a better invitation came along, and he changed his mind. His father His father said to him, "You made a promise, but a better invitation came along." His dad then said, "What would you think if this is what I learned at 5, got a better offer for a wife, a prettier wife, a younger wife, a better income producing wife? What would you think about that?" David responded, "Dad, you can't do that. You made a promise to Mom." His dad then said, "That's right, David. That's why we learn to keep our promises even when we are young." Marge and I, when it came to our children, when they made a promise, no matter what, as long as they lived under our roof, and Marge will tell you no exceptions, no matter what they wanted to do, no matter how trivial the situation, we held them accountable. We held them, and our daughter Tricia, being in the human resources, the HR profession, where you can have major lawsuits if you're not careful. Our son Josiah, who's an attorney, where you could be disbarred. Our daughter Jenny, who is in the branding business and all that she does. When you make a commitment, when you say you're going to do something, if you do not follow through, others will suffer. And this is key. David, at a young, tender age, learned a lesson. He got on the phone and he called Samuel and said, "Samuel, you're my friend. I said I'd be at your birthday. I want to be at your birthday. Please forgive me." He learned this at a young age, and he went to his birthday and he had the best time of his life. And David was so glad he kept his promise. Learning this at 5 years of age in Mechina, kindergarten, Hebrew school, I made a commitment. I will never intentionally break a promise. You see, in 39 years, almost 40 years of being married to the cream in my coffee, Marge. And if any of you get to know Marge at all, you have to know what a blessing. what a gift from God. What favor I have in my life. Marge at times can irritate the living daylights out of me. Not as well as I can irritate her. I'm more gifted. When Marge wants something from me, she's very wise. She starts the discussion at 1 a.m. And I say, babe, we've been together since 6 p.m. over dinner. Just you and me. Why 1 a.m.? She says, because I want you to say yes. And I don't want to give you hours to be able to lawyer over me and not do it. And we laugh. And between you and me, guys, learn this lesson. Unless it is a heaven or hell thing, if Marge wants something, it's hers. If I can do something for her, it's hers. For me to say no to Marge on something, it really has to be something that is a conviction. And I can count on one hand and 3 fingers the amount of times that's ever happened. And I want you to realize here, even at age 5, I didn't even know it, but there was a seed planted in my heart that one day it would be more than a promise, more than a commitment, and certainly more than a contract. It would be a covenant. And in the Old Testament, when you would have a covenant, you literally would take a heifer and you would quarter it. And you would allow a moat to be created, and you'd have all this blood. There's a lot of blood when you gut out, a heifer, and then you'd put it in the shape of a figure 8, and you would walk through the parts right there, and the Jew would recite, "Should I ever break this covenant, may my head be ripped from my shoulders and thrown as far as the east is from the west." How many of you know you might change your mind about divorce if you make that kind of covenant? Cut my head off, walk through my blood, stay with Marge. Hey, I'm staying with Marge, you know what I mean? But it's not just that. I want you to see the value of this commandment because we can miss it. And I'm going to show you how to fulfill it next week, but I'm going to lay the groundwork today. See, this commandment, this childhood story, it gets the essence of the commandment, but this commandment is really about being faithful to your promise. This commandment is key, and here's the big idea. God calls us to be faithful to what? All of our promises, because He is faithful to all of His promises. How many children are devastated today because mom and dad didn't keep their promise to each other? How many children are devastated because mom and dad didn't keep their promises to their own children? How many of us are devastated because we didn't keep our promise to Jesus? See, if we are to be His people, then here is the key of the 7th commandment. We have to reflect His character. The Bible tells us, and it's a different word in Greek for jealousy, but He says, "I am a jealous God. Don't cheat on me. Don't cheat on me. You shall have no other gods before me." God takes this so seriously because He is the lover of our soul, because He's in covenant with us. He has shed His blood. And I'm going to do a series on covenant that'll be probably on a Sunday night or a Thursday night, because it's going to be a 37 or 38-part series. And how many of you know when I do a 38-part series, it becomes a 55-part series? And it's on every covenant in Scripture. How many think that might be a good thing? It'll blow your mind. It'll show you why marriage, our children, if the parents of children aren't able to carry out their responsibility for any reason, it's why God calls grandparents to be the safety net, to be advisors. The worst thing you can do to a child is to take them away from their parents in the sense of that wisdom. You can keep giving me all the parents that are idiots and dumb and morons and say whatever you want, except there's one thing: God made no mistakes when He gave us the parents He gave us. That doesn't mean we do everything that they say. So now in the New Testament, and we're going to move on here today, Jesus makes it clear that keeping your promises applies to what you think, get this now, as well as what you do. What you think. Yeah, how many of you know you can keep a promise? Okay, Marge, The Bible says I have to love you. I love you. I love you. It's not easy. You are God's thorn in my side to grow me, develop me. I can't stand you, but I'm going to love you because I am a man of God. There's something lost in translation. There's something missing. Let me read the scripture. Matthew 5, please do. Verse 27, no one be condemned. No one. Guys, no one's going to be beat up on today. This is an opportunity for real growth. This is already going a different direction than I went earlier today. It's kind of how it goes. I have MSD, for those of you who don't know, so be praying for me. It's called multiple sermon disorder. It's good to see you, Tommy. But it's better to see Robert because I don't see as much of him. But it'll be better to see you tonight. So here it is. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. So, hey, guys, the Old Testament is still in the New Testament, and the New Testament was all through the Old Testament. Who do you think had lunch with Abraham? Thank you, Jesus, for showing up in a theophany or Christophany. Who do you think walked with Adam in the cool of the evening? There's a lot we can talk about. Who do you think was there in the beginning when the Word was written? In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was... Okay, enough of that. Anyway, you shall not commit adultery. But look what Jesus does. Everyone goes, oh, the New Testament. Grace, 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 just a little bitty grace. Grace, 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 just a little... And wait a minute. I find the 10 Commandments are harder in the New Covenant. That's why Jesus has to live in you, because it takes a real Jesus to pull it off. In the Old Testament, it's Emmanuel, God with us, and God in the temple, and only the high priest can get into the Holy of Holies. But now it's like, I need a real Jesus to pull this thing off, because I can't do this in my own strength. I don't love my enemies in my own strength, but I have to. Friends, I don't ask forgiveness in my own strength, but when the fullness of the Godhead is in me, when Jesus is dwelling in us bodily, where would we be without Jesus? Where would we be without His Word? We would have perished. But I tell you, New Testament now, it's called the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully, oh Lord, you can't be serious, has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Okay, this is the impossible gospel. Nobody can do that. I had a friend whose name I will not mention who is completely blind. And I said, can a blind man, since you can't see, lust? He said, you have no idea. I have the same struggles that you have. Jesus also goes on and he accuses the people of his time of being an adulterous generation. He even says, friendship with this world, you become an enemy of God. He says that when the things of this world, even money, become more important than Jesus, instead of a tool and a blessing and a gift. I'm the bride of Christ. He's the groom. This whole thing ends at Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, where there will be the marriage supper of the Lamb. He says, ultimately, you've got to look at this thing. He says, you can be an adulterer against God. Let me tell you something. Adultery in marriage is not the big problem. It's not a big problem. Even though they say 8 out of 10 men will cheat on their wife at least once, please don't go home and kill your husband. I didn't say him. It used to be 3 women out of 10. Now they say it's about 5.7, according to George Gallup. But can I tell you something? That's not a problem. You think it's a problem. That's a symptom. The real problem is adultery against God. I have found when I am married to Jesus and my heart is tender. Remember, people are given a divorce because of hardness of heart. When I'm really in love with Jesus, and when Jesus, the Savior of my soul, the lover of my soul, and the keeper of my soul, is numero uno, achad, one in my life, then the physical adultery, it's not even an option. And for years, the church keeps trying to solve the adultery problem, husbands and wives. And there's a law, and there's consequences, don't get me wrong, but every time you pull the dandelion out, it happens again and again and again. But when a person can really get their marriage to Jesus right, it changes everything. If you were here earlier, I'm not changing this message on purpose. I'm changing it on purposefulness. Here's what happened. This is a generation, this adulterous generation, that had become confused in both its attitudes and behaviors. And I'm going to use the sex word here, pertaining to sex, marriage, and putting God first. It was sex, it was marriage, and putting God first that caused Jesus to call them an adulterous generation, as well as friendship with the world. Now you can say, Bill, why would you teach this here? Would you rather your kids, your husband, your wife, should we be learning about sex from the Playboy channel, from Hustler magazine, from the internet, or should we be learning about it from the Word of God? Because believe me, grandparents, parents, somebody's talking to your kids already. They're hearing this stuff at a very young age. And the problem is, because many of us, when we got married for the physical reasons, and physical's great. I mean, I love how Marge looks. I love her size. It's proportional to me. But all that being said, if all you have is the physical, then you are but the shell of a man, the shell of a woman. And we've missed the essence of the seventh commandment. But the struggle is here today is we live in an adulterous generation. It literally has made it popular. We're told, man, if it feels good, do it. Doesn't matter if you are LBGTQ or LMNOP. Doesn't matter anymore. Be whatever you want to be, and everyone goes in the same bathrooms, and there's no differences anymore. And we're missing something here. We're so bound by the physical. And we don't realize how wonderful the physical is if the spiritual and the soul, which is the mind, emotions, intellect, will, and personality, are in kingdom order. See, we live in a culture that makes it a struggle for us to remain pure in our minds and our hearts and our attitudes and our behaviors. The seventh commandment addresses one of the 10 greatest struggles of our life. Again, Exodus 20, verse 14. This is a textual teaching. Just has a few words. You shall not commit adultery. But we're New Testament believers also. We have the fulfillment of God's word. See, this is a struggle. This is a struggle for purity in both your behavior as well as your heart. But the problem is, you can put all the filters on the internet you want. You can help change the behavior when your eyes are on him or her. But have you changed the heart? You see, can I blow your mind? If Marge came home and said, I love you because I have to. I love you because Jesus is making me love you. Okay, I'm going to be submissive even though I don't feel like doing it. It's worthless. How many of you know Jesus is coming back for a bride without spot, without blemish, without wrinkle? You may be offended by this. He's not coming back for a whore. He's coming back for a bride. Jesus is not hard up. Jesus is not desperate. How many of you know Jesus is still going to be Jesus whether you become the bride of Christ or not? And I don't think we understand, with cheap grace, we're teaching the world today you can have no appetite for God, no desire for God, no relationship with God, no commitment to God, and no faithfulness to his word, and still be a believer because you prayed a prayer and he is stuck with you. And that's not what Scripture teaches. The stronghold of impure thoughts and acts is so potent that many of us have just given up. I can't control it. There's nothing I can do. Be ye filled with the Holy Spirit. Be ye filled with the Holy Spirit. I have learned when I am emptied of Bill and filled with Jesus, everything that's righteous is going to happen. You see, I'm here to give you hope today, not to contribute to a sense of hopelessness and defeat. I want you to know this can begin to change right now. I believe many of us, because at a young age we had the friends with the magazines, or we had the friends with the wrong attitudes, or we had parents that gave us stinking thinking, or generational curses that we're suffering with because there's this twisted root system, and we're drinking from something that is not of God, and we're wondering, why can't I love my wife? Let me help you out with the seventh commandment, ladies. If you've got a boyfriend that's bound by pornography or is cheating on you now, I guarantee you it'll be far worse in marriage. You see, pornography is to a human being what salt water is to a man who's dying of thirst. It may appear to quench your thirst for a moment, but ultimately it will destroy you. There's this drawing, and here's what happens. You see, we're three-dimensional human beings, and the physical is the least of the three dimensions. And so when we are so bound by these other things, we come into a marriage, and we want our wife to be this sex goddess, or our girlfriend, and we want all these needs to be fulfilled. And please don't get me wrong. Intimacy in marriage is called to be a beautiful thing. It's even how we come together. It's how we bond, and there's some important things there. But if a man does not have an understanding, ladies, hear me out. You have all the control in dating whether to say yes or no. Once you get married and now you start having kids, you're stuck on the Titanic if you're not careful. There's a lot at stake here. This is a daddy of 3 daughters. I'm looking to the Word. I'm letting you know why there's a very low divorce rate among Orthodox Jews. We're taught they have a ketubah, an agreement that if I'm to leave my wife, there to be a 6 figures. I mean, these Jewish guys are making money, and there's like a significant amount of money put away, and if you cheat on your wife, it's automatically hers. And then 70% of your salary, it's right there in the ketubah, is now going to go to her to make sure she can support the kids. You don't even think of a second marriage. How many of you know it's amazing? It's like people say, well, the divorce rate's really low in India. How many of you know when it's capital punishment for divorce, you might think twice? And I don't want you to love Jesus or love somebody else just because it's an obligation. I want you to see the joy of this commandment and why it's here, not to beat you up, not to kick you to the curb, not to destroy you. There are people that came into our life, situations, attitudes in our family, narcissism, a lot of things that have led to this. And I'm telling you, Jesus died for these things. Let's consider this road that leads to hope in our struggle with purity. Just a few things here, and then we'll call it a day. God made the first man and the first woman. How many of you agree? What do they say if you're an evolutionist? Welcome, I'm glad you're here. You believe we came from primordial slime. We believe something pretty similar. We believe we came from a ball of dirt. The difference is we don't understand how primordial sludge and slime through the years becomes us. But when God breathes into dirt, the Ruach of God, when the Spirit of God breathes into whatever you are, isn't it amazing how we're fearfully and wondrously made? Listen. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, not transgendered, not gay, not putting anybody down. He created them. But the very first thought on sexual matters, it actually originated from God. That thought in the mind of God was absolutely pure. I teach in premarital counseling. They were naked and they were unashamed. They were totally free, Adam and Eve, to be who God called them to be. But the problem is they did commit adultery. With who? God. They cheated on God. And thus you saw the consequences. But this thought of God created man and woman as sexual beings is especially important for those who are brought up with a negative, puritanical attitude about sex. You can warn your kids all you want about the front seat of the church versus the back seat of a car. You can warn your children all you want about the internet. But friends, I'm telling you, you can put a coil on a donkey's tail, but once the coil comes off, the tail goes back to its actual original shape. You're not changing your children with behavior modification. Yes, have the conversations, but what does that look like? We'll talk about it. Scripture teaches us that the marriage bed is to be kept pure. Hebrews 13:4, marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled. God is saying it is to be kept pure, to suggest that the marriage bed and intimacy is pure. It is a tremendous gift from God that's a part of creation itself in the very beginning. God desires this incredible gift of purity and covenant and intimacy in the following way. Matthew 19:5. Here's what he said. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. Listen, parents. When your son and your daughter get married, get out of the way. Okay? First of all, kids, no cleaving before leaping. But for us parents, now hear me out. If one of my daughters is being abused, I am not going to interfere. I'm going to let Smith & Wesson interfere. You better know I'm going to get law enforcement. I'm going to get her out of that situation. I'm not talking about that. But I'm saying, well, mother-in-laws, hear me out. I don't care if, we used to say in Judaism, if your daughter-in-law can't cook chicken noodle soup and Canadian and crepe lak or whatever the big food is, and it can't do things your way, well, guess what? Get out of the way. I was watching a football game, and Marge and I were dating, and we're at my parents' home. And I yelled, hey, Mom! I said, can you get me a glass of ice water? Okay, honey, I'll get it right away. She came in there. And Marge is watching this whole thing. And she says, honey, when we get married, don't think that's going to work with me. There might be some arsenic in there. I shouldn't say that. But anyway, but serious, okay? The act of becoming one flesh is more, and I want you to get this today, than the union of two bodies. So you might say, but I'm older. I'm a widow now. I'm a widower. This has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. You were supposed to have one mind, one heart. It is the partnership of two souls and two spirits. Marge and I now have a common father. In fact, guess what? It's really hard to handle God once you get married, because God's not just my father, now he's my father-in-law, and he takes very seriously, like any father-in-law, how I'm treating his daughter. Now it gets better. Becoming one flesh is actually a one-time act by which you're bound to another for life. It's also a process of the two growing in this oneness throughout an entire lifetime. I call this the Velcroing of your soul. How many of you know with Velcro, it really sticks the first time? But if you rip it, and now I'm with another woman, it's still a little weaker. Another woman, a little weaker. And when it's time to bond with my wife, the one, you see, this might shock you. Marge was incredible. Well, this won't shock you. Incredibly pure coming into our marriage. I didn't become a believer until 2 weeks before I turned 20 years old. And I found God gave me great grace when I said, Lord, I want it your way. I will do whatever you say. And it wasn't a real struggle. You will find God gives you, when you come out of addictions, unbelievable grace if you take it the first time. But if you frustrate the grace of God, you'll be going through programs and processes, and you'll be spending the rest of your life trying to get out of it until you finally make the determination. I'm crucifying my old man today. It's over. Here's what it really comes down to. Everything I put in my body and everything I do with my body, we're told to glorify God. This is the seventh commandment in our mortal members. A little bit different than we went earlier today, but here's the key. Since my body's a temple of God, the Holy Spirit dwells within me, I ask myself this question. Do my children see me from my heart really modeling with my body, with my spirit, and with my soul? My body's just the container of the soul and the spirit. Really honoring God. If they don't, what do I tell you every week? The ceiling of your sin, you're at risk of it becoming the floor for the next generation. Now, there's a tremendous struggle for many in the process of becoming one. And there are those who have passion to become one in body, but no interest in becoming one in soul and spirit. Listen, guys, listen to me, men, listen. And some of you ladies, you need to hear this too. There's a lot of men, man, she's beautiful. And we are making a big mistake because we think she can captivate us and capture our love for a lifetime. But you see, it was the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life that bring you to forbidden fruit. And so if all you've done is bond in the body, you will have atrophy. Your growth is stunted. It's really like you are spiritually and in your soul retarded. There's no growth going on here. Mind, emotions, intellect, will, or personality relationally. Because if all it is physical, what happens is, instead of it just making you one in marriage, where you need to really grow in communication. You need to grow in being able to do great exploits for the Master. What has Jesus called us to do? Why does he want us to have kids? What's the purpose of our life? And in your spirit, seeking the Lord. If one will set 1,000 to flight, two will set 10,000 to flight, then you get your kid on board with God. Now it's going to be 100,000. Then the next kid is going to be 1,000,000. Then the fifth kid is going to be 10 million. And the list goes on. It's an incredible thing. But here's our thing. There are those who want to become one in soul. Some of you ladies, oh, I want to have devotions, and I want to pray, and Jesus, and you want to do all those things, but I just don't have a sexual appetite. I just have no desire. It doesn't justify your husband's sin, but may I submit to you, you are also out of kingdom order. You are supposed to grow in spirit, soul, and body. And we do not realize the problem. Some of us do what's called incestual adultery. Let me explain before you freak out. If I go to my daughters or my sons, your mother's really disappointed me and she's just not growing here and she's doing this and that. Anything that you should only share with your spouse that's intimate, that you share with your children, you are out of kingdom order. You are destroying that child. That's actually called adultery. You're trying to get your kid to replace the parent. If your husband has left you and all of a sudden, I'm so lonely, somebody had my 9-year-old daughter or my 9-year-old son sleep in the same bed with me just to be there, and friends, then they're not going to grow as adults. You are atrophying them. They're going to miss everything. No matter how hurt you are, no matter what your pain is, we must understand there are things that only a husband is to do for a wife and a wife to do for a husband. And it's not just the physical things. I'm talking about the spiritual things. I'm talking about the mind, emotions, intellect, will, personality, the soul things as well. I should finish up. The church, oh, by the way, it says what God has brought together. That's speaking of oneness. In spirit, soul, and body, let no man cast asunder. The Church of England gets this right. They have this wonderful phrase in the marriage ceremony. Strengthen the union of their hearts through the union of their bodies. This is the right order. It's saying that when we are ready to come together physically, it took me 7 months of dating Marge to finally get to kiss her forehead. I was aiming for her lips, actually, but the height discrepancy. No, she just put her head down right away. I just want to kiss your lips. I mean, just like, you just a first love letter she sent me, she signed it, Fondly Marge. Fondly. I'm like pouring my heart out. You are the apple of my eye. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was excited. Fondly Marge. And then she wanted to really discuss a lot of things about how are we going to grow together? What's your plan for devotions for us growing? She had all these questions at 18 years old. I'm thinking, I might have to stay a Christian if I marry her. Or maybe I need to really be a believer for this marriage to be successful. Let me finish up. Please do. We are next introduced to a sin that has entered the world that tears oneness apart. It threatens families and has impacted every person on the planet to some degree. Tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. We now live in a world with fallen human sexuality. Bruce Jenner has gone from being a weedy spokesman, and they've actually said this is really true. Fruit Loops wants to use them now. They think it's fun. I know it sounds funny, but I mean, I know the jokes about it. I'm going, But you know, it does make sense. I'm just going, but what's the hurt? What's the pain that this man has been through? Things are not as they were in the original state of the garden. See, the temptation is to give God's pure gift and to use it in the wrong kind of ways. And some of young ladies think if I don't sleep with him, someone else will, and then he won't marry me. And how's that worked for you, Toots? It doesn't. It doesn't. God has made it very clear that the proper use of this gift of sexuality is in the context of love and the setting of marriage. There's never an exception. Parents, hear me out now. Hear me out. When we give our children, in order to keep a relationship with them, a blessing to marry a person who truly is not a believer, we are aiding and abetting adultery, because friendship with the world is becoming God's enemy. I'm not putting you down for this. Yeah, but my husband got saved as a result. And man, thank God for his grace and his mercy and his compassion on you. But God told us you don't date an unbeliever. And we have been foolish to think just because of an altar call and a one-time prayer that somebody's saved. You'll know a tree by its fruit. Everything I'm sharing today is so difficult without Jesus. With Jesus, he will work in your life both to will and to do of his good pleasure. When we take this gift outside of the context of marriage, we abuse the gift and we lose sight of its purpose. This was to make Marge and I one, so we could raise kids to be one with Jesus, so we could pastor a church with integrity, so we could pastor a church and be an example. Because remember, the way a pastor treats his wife is ultimately the way he's going to treat the church. Every time. No exception. Period. You'll watch Marge and I, we don't agree on everything. We don't agree on everything. Abraham's wife called him Lord. I said, honey, Abraham's wife called him Lord. She says, you ain't Abraham. Friends, the explosion of pornography has taken this gift from God and reframed sexuality for many. So let me finish up. It has gone from an expression between two and thrust it into a private world for one. It has taken what was intended for love and reduced it to an expression of lust and release. There is no way, sir. There is no way, ma'am. And women, you get caught up in your Harlequin romances or whatever it is, or all your Beverly Hills wives or Dallas wives or your mama don't dance and daddy don't rock and roll wives or whatever the shows are. But there's a lot of times back in the days of Grey's Anatomy, it's McSteamy and McDreamy and, oh, why can't my husband be like them? And we don't realize many of us are blaming the young kids for the two-dimensional world of social media. Friends, no woman can compete with a photoshopped rendition of this thing of perfection that doesn't even exist. Our sexuality was designed to create a bond with another person. So here it is. There are those who are in darkness and privacy, and they only bond with themselves. It's called narcissism. So whatever your excuse is, whatever your reason, anytime I do something that's not of Jesus, how many of you know it's not of Jesus? When sex is only used for self-gratification as opposed to an expression of love, it becomes merely self-serving. This is the seventh commandment. We just go stone the person to death. That's the law, yeah, adultery. When this gift that God has given us is misused, it ends up drawing us apart as husband and wife, as opposed to drawing us to one another. And so right now, guys, gals, until we draw nigh to God, when we really recommit that bond, that marriage as the bride of Christ with Jesus, until we do that and really mean to do that, may I submit to you, nothing is going to change. I didn't even get as far as I got earlier today, but I'm okay with that, and so are you. Would you write down the words for me there, Chris? God has given us the sacred gift. Because we're going to start at a different place next week than the 9 a.m. group. How many of you that were here earlier, message was similar but different? Some different points here, and it always will be. I want to ask you a question. Let's close our eyes for a moment. I always love to give you the action steps on how to regain purity. how to really bond with your spouse, how to really bring this thing together. Men, until we have, and I want to start a boot camp here, until we men are willing to be accountable to each other. See, women tend to really bond well with each other. Men tend to live in seclusion. And never forget, a mushroom flourishes in darkness underneath a rock. But when you expose that mushroom to the light, it shrivels up and it dies. Don't beat yourself up, man. This is part of the fall. Has God really said, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, adultery began in the garden. God has something wonderful. And I'm more concerned about our friendship with the world and the adultery that just says, I prefer entertainment and sports and all this other stuff. That's not sin, unless you put it before Jesus. But there's so many of us here today, men, we're having a battle in our private lives. Until we deal with that, we can never have the beautiful covenantal biblical intimacy with our wife or our children. And if you're single, you've been spared from having a destroyed life and destroying other lives because you haven't gotten this. And here's the good news. You can't even fix yourself. You can't do a thing about this but Jesus. When you give yourself fully to Jesus genuinely, I promise you, you're going to live a life that's going to blow your mind in a good way. So I'm going to ask you, if we close our eyes, if you know somebody or if it's you, and it might not be a sexual thing. It may be a thing where you know you're just in love with the world. Or you realize when you got married, yeah, the physical was so important, but we've never grown in the spiritual or the soul realm. Just lift your hand and say, Bill, pray for me. Pray for me. Just pray for me. Because you know what? For me, I find adultery with this world is so easy for me. So easy. Not putting Jesus first is so easy. But as long as I die daily, no problem. So let's stand to our feet, and I'm going to ask my prayer partners just to be in front. Anybody that wants prayer for anything, we're going to be available, but I want to pray. I want to pray right now. Father, in Jesus' name, help us. If you're here today and you're saying, Bill, I need to really know Jesus because I'm not sensing the power of God, the presence of God, and the deliverance of God in my life right now, but I really need to know Jesus. Lift your hand, lift your hand, lift your hand, lift your hand. Okay, we're just going to pray. God bless you, man. Let's just say, Dear Jesus. Let's all pray together. Dear Jesus, you are Lord, and I am not. And I declare you as my Lord right now. Jesus, you are a Savior, the Savior, and I need to be saved. Save me, Lord. You defeated the grave. You're risen. Now let your resurrection power show up in my life right now. Take the twisted and dead parts of my life, set them straight, and breathe life into me again. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, if you need healing, whatever it is,